Hello and welcome to the Plant Paradigm Podcast, where we have inspiring conversations with amazing individuals from all around the world and look for ways to create a clean, green and sustainable future for us, the planet and all beings. I'm your host, Tom Simak, a fellow plant eater who strives to optimize every living ecosystem, passionate about looking after this beautiful floating rock we call home and all the lovely creatures that dwell among it. Just a reminder, all our conversations actually do go up on the YouTubes, and I always leave a link down below if you wanted to watch that happen. The conversation does continue on Instagram, where I'll post tips and tricks on how to be the healthiest you, most recent science that I've found and discovered, and small, snackable, digestible sizes of the conversations that we have and my favorite parts. As a fan of the fitness world, I'm really excited to share this conversation with Lucy Bartholomew. Lucy is an ultra runner, and her achievements and wins are on a list too long to mention. Just mentioning a few though, her journey in competition began in 2013, where she came second in the 250 kilometer Big Red Run. In 2014, she claimed the World Junior Female Skyrunning Champion in France. Fast forwarding to 2018, where she was the first female in a myriad of different events, including the Two Bays 56 kilometer run, Tarawera 60 kilometer, Ring of Fire 75k, and Shotover moonrun marathon. And she actually set the course record for those mentioned and plenty of others. Beyond all those accolades, Lucy is a kind, genuine, and happy soul. Just a moment of pre-warning, due to technical difficulties and the limitations of the interwebs, there were many moments where Lucy disappeared for a few minutes, and as frustrating as that was for me, and the few nuggets that she was talking about were lost in transmission, Lucy and I were talking before, after, and during the show about how everything does happen for a reason, and who knows what they are. We might never know, but as they say, it is what it is. So I apologize in advance for the few nuggets that were lost, but I really think this conversation is in depth and really jam-packed. We'll be talking a lot about overcoming self-judgment, her favorite stories from the events that she's competed in, positivity, and basically a 360 on what her life is like as a professional athlete. For those who haven't seen her stuff online, I think you'll quickly see why she's a good PR agent for smiles. But without further ado, enjoy this conversation between Lucy and I. All right, click and record, so you should see that on the top of your screen as well. Lucy, thank you for jumping onto the Plant Paradigm Podcast. How are you going today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me. It's it's been a good day, good start to the week, and it's only going to get better.
Hell yeah. How's Tani?
Tani is, today she picked up, we had big wins last night, and she picked up probably the biggest branch she could. And it was quite amusing watching her run around with pretty much a bush coming from her mouth.
I know. I saw the Instagram story and I'm like, that is just the cutest thing ever. But like, you got to just love them trying to do that. You're like, yeah, you push the boundaries of what a dog can fit in its mouth.
Oh, if I could have Tani's confidence and her ability to make the best of every situation, I think that's the ideal way of living.
I mean, how long have you had Tani in your life now?
So she's been with us. She's 8 months old, and she's been with us for 5.
Nice. Have you felt like you've learned something from having her?
Yeah, it's been amazing. It's kind of one of those things. We've been talking, me and my dad, about getting a dog for so long. It's mainly for him for when I travel, but of course We got it when I'm here, which is amazing. Suddenly it's my dog. But she's very much allowed us to live in the present, like for her, the only thing that matters is now. And, of course, when it's mealtime, which, it's a pretty cool way to live is, you just kind of forget what happened and move on. And I think humans could learn a lot from that.
I feel like subconsciously that's kind of the reason why humans have, I guess, continued having dogs as companions. Like, yes, I guess there's a survival thing and that's how it started. But nowadays in modern society, surely it's got to do with the fact that dogs bring into the present moment.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that they're just unforgiving. So they're very forgiving, and they don't, they don't care about how fast you run. They don't care about, what you do. They just want you to be there. And that's what Tani, for me during the lockdown with the training and the restrictions, taking her for a walk is the best thing in the world to her. And then it becomes the best thing in the world to me. So yeah, we both don't care. I don't care if she's pooed on the carpet, and she doesn't care if I had a terrible run.
That's the cutest thing ever. And it's such a cool bond that humans can create with an animal. And guys, it's just so cool and blows my mind. But my big question to you is, how much do you really love watermelon?
Probably not as much as a lot of people want me to say. I've started this whole watermelon thing started in 2017, and the amount I have consumed between 2017 and 2020 is probably enough to fill a lot of people's lifetimes. They got to a point where I was gifted watermelons wherever I went, different colors, shapes, tastes, from different parts of the world. And I was getting sent in the post, anything that had a watermelon, be it like a tea towel, be it a wallet, a journal, a pen, a badge, some earrings. And I'm like, I think I need to change my fruit because it's getting a little much.
I mean, you kind of don't want to get sick of it at the same time, because watermelons are like the most succulent freaking fruit out there. But from my understanding, this all started, was it 2017 that you ran the Ultra Trail Cape Town, the 100 Ks, I think it was, and you fueled that with watermelon? Is that how it started?
Yeah. So what happened was, I was in South Africa in Cape Town for a 100-kilometer race. And, when you're lining up for 100 Ks, anything can happen. And I tried to, take in my normal fuel of running gels and such. And my stomach just went, hey, not today. And my fallback when that happens, usually, because the easiest thing on my stomach is kind of Coke, the Coca-Cola, the drink, and watermelon, just like simple sugars, really easy. And that's what I fueled on from about 20 Ks. So for about 80 kilometers, all I ate was watermelon, and all I drank was Coke. And the reason why the whole watermelon thing came about was I'd come into checkpoints and I fill my flasks and bottles up with Coke, but then in my hands I would have, 3 or 4 pieces of watermelon, and then I'd shove some in my backpack, and then I'd have 1 or 2 hanging out my mouth. And that's where all the photographers were. So all they had was images of me just holding like probably a whole watermelon every time I left the checkpoint. And I came back to Australia and I won the race. I set a record. Woo! And and I was on Sunrise, the national morning show. And in the teletext, they usually say, Lucy Bartholomew, Ultra Trail Cape Town champion or something. And this time they said, Lucy Bartholomew, known for her excessive amounts of eating watermelon. And it was just from then on, I got all these followers on social media who were just in love with the amount of watermelon I ate, and thought that was just kind of all I did.
You're a hero. You're like the watermelon, I don't know, icon of the 21st century.
Well, I went on then to make T-shirts with a watermelon with the elevation profile cut out of it, and sold 4,000 of those around the world.
Wow.
And then I sold
one in a melon, huh?
Yeah, and then I did the one in the melon, and that sold 900 transfers. And it's just bags, there's hats, there's T-shirts, singlets, whatever you want. It's been quite a ride, the watermelon.
Jeez, it's the first thing I kind of saw, like when I started following you, I forgot how many months ago it was, and I just saw this watermelon thing going on. I'm like, I have to dive deeper. Like, what is going on? But I love the story, and I love how you just kind of rocked on with it. Like, that's cool. A lot of people would be like, kind of like almost offended and a bit like, you drop the ego. You're like, let's just have fun with it. Let's just go.
Yeah, I think, now it's really a symbol of community. I think watermelon is something that everyone loves. It's kind of like, yeah, in Australia in summertime, it's some of the best you can get. And now it's a symbol. Some person that said they were at a foot, and they 2 rows ahead of them was someone wearing the watermelon T-shirt of mine. And at one of the points, at the halftime, they went down and said hey to that person, because they were like, well, I knew that it would be a nice person because they support you and they're wearing the watermelon too.
Some rumors have it that Harry Styles got inspiration for watermelon sugar from you. That's the rumor.
Yeah, that's exactly what I think.
Yes. When we were actually chatting before this and trying to book in the interview, you said, let's hold it tentatively because you might be up in the mountains. What does that even mean?
Yeah, so the borders are open and we can travel, Victorians can travel regionally. And so I was planning to get to the mountains kind of as soon as possible. So I went last weekend up to the Bright region and kind of ran around Mount Hotham and Mount Buffalo and Mount Feathertop. And then I was thinking this week to be Mount Buller and kind of stay up there for a little bit. But I came back down. I missed my dog. I missed my dad too much. And I thought I'd just continue to train here and plan something for a little bit later. And obviously to make the podcast.
Oh, I didn't even know about your dad and his dog. This is clearly the most important, let's be honest. No, Is training in the mountains mainly so you have that constant inclination, or is it to be around nature? Like, what's your philosophy behind that?
Yeah, it's really just a change of scenery. Australian mountains aren't huge, but you do get a little bit of altitude. You can, obviously Mount Bogong is up to 1,900 meters. But really, long climbs and stuff, I can actually get out in the Yarra Valley where I am. The inclines and stuff. But really, it's just so beautiful. And I also just wanted to support the towns out there, obviously, during these hard moments through the bushfires and then COVID. So it was more about that than probably myself.
For sure. And it's always beautiful up there anyway. And the people are just so damn nice. Like, I don't know, I live in Metro Melbourne, so it's really different. But you go out to the country towns and it's like a different bloody world. It's like a different state. I don't know. But in preparation for this interview, I was actually gobsmacked on how many events you've not only completed, but literally crushed out of the water. Like even like the Big Red, I think it was called the 250K one. Like that's just insane numbers for me. Like considering I'm just training for a marathon, my first marathon, I'm like, what is these numbers? Like, how is that happening? But I actually want to know if there's any particular race or event that you're particularly really proud of.
Yeah, well, it's awesome you're training for a marathon. That's so, so exciting. And it's certainly nothing it's not a comparison thing, because some people 5 kilometers is a massive, massive effort. My resume, I ran my first 100Ks when I was 15 and I'm 24 now. So it's 9 years of kind of being in the sport, and a lot of races, because I don't race all my races. Sometimes I just run races for training and for community and for fun. So for me, there's probably 3 races that really stand out, all for different reasons. So in 2012, running the Surf Coast Century, which was my first 100K with my dad. So we ran, the race rules were if you were under 18, you had to run side by side with a parent or guardian. So for 12 and a half hours, my dad and I ran side by side from sun up to sundown and just had an amazing experience. He kind of coached me through what 100 kilometers can feel like. And we lifted each other up and when the other was down. So that was a really cool experience. And it left me wanting to continue being in this sport. I think if I'd done my first 100K by myself, I would have gone out too hard and blown up and walked in and been like, oh, this is hard. This is a long way. I don't want to do that again. My second probably highlight race was the Ultra Trail Australia. So another local race in Sydney, and it's in the Blue Mountains. It's 100 kilometers and I ran it on my 21st birthday. And it's a race that I've always wanted to do. I ran it on my 18th, but it was kind of just a a fun run just to see the course. And then on my 21st, I really wanted to win it. And I won it. I won it on a changed course, but it ended up finishing with 20 Ks out and 20 Ks back. And in that 20 Ks back, I ran through a lot of the field, and people stood aside on the trail and sang me happy birthday. So for the last 20 kilometers of this race, I had people singing. And then at the end of the finish line, I had, the whole corridor of supporters all cheering and wishing me happy birthday. My brother there and my dad and everyone. So it was an amazing, amazing day. And then my third probably highlight race would be the Western States in 2018. It was my first 100-mile race in America, so 160 kilometers. And it was just one of those days where I don't actually remember a whole lot about it. I was told that I was compared to being like a puppy who comes home for the first time, where you're just so excited and so happy and just running around everywhere. And yeah, I kind of, didn't have any expectations, but it blew out the water every expectation that I ever could have thought of. It was a dream day, and I finished third on what is the most historical 100-miler in the world.
That's freaking awesome. And you hear these distances, and for someone who's maybe, I'm guessing most people that are tuned into this have some, I guess, knowledge of fitness or have tried out fitness, but, it's hard to comprehend what's actually going through your mind, like 50 Ks in or 100, in terms of this 100K, 160K one, 100 Ks in. What's your mentality at, and does it change consistently in like different levels along the 12 or 20 or however many hours it takes to complete it?
Yeah, definitely. So, I have a saying, don't trust the first 30 minutes of a run. I think the first 30 minutes of every run I do, I feel awful and I want to stop, and the body's kind of a little creaky and it feels like it's taking forever. So I kind of always I'm just like, Lucy, get through this first 30 minutes. You know what this is going to be like. It's always going to, if you're at the first 30 minutes is hard, and then you're looking towards 100 kilometers more ahead of you, it can seem a long, long way. So for me, it's kind of just using that time just to enjoy, because you're usually surrounded by people. And then kind of breaking it down, there's checkpoints along the way that have food and water, and you might have crew. And just kind of breaking it into bite-sized pieces. And that might be like 20K sections. It might be a park run, 5-kilometer section, or it might just be the next tree. But for me, it's just about staying present, not worrying too much about the future, controlling the things I can control. I think we all get a bit caught up with worrying about things like the weather and snakes and animals and injuries and things that haven't happened but could happen. And you could write a book on things that could happen, but the things you can control is watching where you put your feet, carrying a snake bandage, having food, eating regularly, your clothing. You can kind of flip all those things that could happen into things you can do to prevent that possibly from happening. So for me, my mentality is always just be in the moment, do what you can, smile the whole way, and just, be grateful for this opportunity.
How did you learn to be grateful and be present? That's a lot of people get to 20, 30, 50 or 80 years old and not actually having learned the gift of being present. How did that come into fruition for you?
I think, running, to me, it can be quite a present sport, especially trail running is something where, it's not on the road where it's kind of mindless and you can switch off and just you barely lift your feet. But when you're trail running, you've got rocks and trees and branches and birds and things you can fall off. And there's a lot more hazards along the way. So you are brought back to the present through that sport. But I think for me, I've always been interested in the spiritual side of life and living, and reading books like The Power of Now and listening to people who have different perspectives. I think like you say, humans can go for 20, 30, 40, 50 years not understanding that gratitude and being present is such a gift and it can be a life-changing philosophy. And I think it's because we're kind of just taught to think about what's next. We're always asking like, oh, you finished high school, what are you going to study? When you finish studying, what are you going to have for a job? When you got your job, when are you going to have kids? You know, there's this constant like, oh, okay, like you've done this bit, now you got to tick this box. And in trail running and in this sport of ultra running, you're kind of just like, I can't tick anything because I just got to live right now and I just got to do what I can now. And so it's kind of just something I've really been interested in, really read about. And then when I went to Nepal earlier this year, I kind of definitely was reinforced that through a camp I went on and just the people I spoke to and seeing that culture kind of, really emphasize that in themselves.
Yeah, it's awesome that you bring up Nepal, because I did do a bit of stalking and listening, obviously in preparation, and you actually had an experience, or a lot of that time, I think it was like 2 weeks, where you were in your robes and you kind of talked about how no one could tell what you were, and you had an opportunity to not be the runner Lucy, but you had an opportunity to just be a being. Have you, from that moment, I was hoping you could talk a bit about that, but have you also brought lessons from that back into your life now in modern civilization?
Yeah, definitely. So like going back before I went to Nepal, and the way, we said before this podcast, we'll just let the world happen as it happens. And, if the connection's a little bad, then it's not meant to be heard.
Yeah.
But I had a really great 2018. I had that Western States race. I was cloud nine. Nothing could stop me. And then 2019 came around, and I realized that you're not invincible, and that the body will take rest when it needs it, and it will fight against if it needs to be rested. And then, so I finished 2019 in a pretty bad place. I wasn't super stoked on running, and I, was continuing to run, kind of to run away from it all. And I flew to New Zealand and I took on the Tarawera 100K, where I had a terrible run. I had a tear in my hamstring, but I was continuing to run and just being dumb, doing what I tell everyone not to do.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a not as I do moment. And then I was looking in Nepal and I was like, I got to find something that's not running related. I've always wanted to go to the Himalayas, to the giant mountains, but if I am in pain when I run, I don't think it's the place to be. But I really wanted to go to Nepal. I was meant to go there for some work. And I ended up coming upon this retreat, which is something that it's really hard to get into. It's really hard to find online. But it's pretty much just this, it's like a very monk style retreat where you're really stripped away. There's days, and a few of them, where there's no speaking allowed. There's a very strict eating protocol. There's no exercise except for kind of a meditation and a few yoga classes. You're undergone, like you do quite a lot of communication and interaction through like other means. And one of the things is you get there and they take away all your belongings. And, all I had was my running gear, and everyone was changed into the same robe, and that's what you wore. And the idea is that the clothes that you wear, they portray who you are. So if you looked at me, you'd be like, oh, wearing running clothes. Oh, she's got, like pretty big calves. Oh, she must be a runner. And you create these assumptions, you create a story without even knowing. So I would have entered that as the runner Lucy, and that was stripped away, and I wasn't able to train every day, and I wasn't doing what I would normally do. It made me think, away from those shoes and those clothes and my training, what else can I bring to the world? Who else am I? Who is Lucy down to the core and in this robe, And I think it's a really hard question. And as an athlete who, like I say, for 9 years, I've identified as a professional athlete or just, like a runner, it was really kind of eye-opening to be like, there's so much more I want to do. And then you say, like, what did I bring back? Is that I've come back and I've written a cookbook. I wanted to do that for 4 years and I finally did it. I became an author. I wanted to work more in the environmental side of things. And so I'm kind of working with other organizations that kind of pull that together. You know, I'm also a daughter to my dad, I'm a sister to my brother, I'm mom to my dog, you know, and I want to be all those things. And being a runner is a very, very small part of who I am. And yeah, just kind of realizing that it doesn't define me. And it's super funny or interesting. I left that retreat feeling really light of all these questions that I kind of had on myself. And I went running in the Himalayas and I didn't feel my hamstring. And it was kind of this, I think it was very all connected. I think that the turmoil and the questioning in my brain was manifesting in my hamstring, and that was the physical outlet. And I can like run through, you know, depressing thoughts or hard times because I know how to run. But when you have a hamstring problem, which is pretty needed when you want to run, it was kind of the one thing that stopped me in my tracks. And it's probably the best thing that ever happened to me.
For sure. And a lot of the times you'll hear stories of like thoughts manifesting in pain and all these different things. And I bet that would have been so difficult. And, you know, I can tell, and I know anecdotally it's difficult to not get sucked into or getting shoeboxed into being one particular thing. Like you're all things, you're just in a flow state and you experience different things. But would you have any particular bit of advice for someone who's potentially almost subconsciously shoeboxing themselves? Like what questions did you ask yourself that you felt that helped along your journey?
Yeah, I would say, you know, what are you without that? I will not always be, and I can never be just Lucy the runner. You know, Lucy the runner can be a part of me. You know, I started off running because I shared it with my dad. I continued to run because I loved the community. I loved the travel. It was an opportunity to give something back to the world. Then when running became my job, my why was like, well, this pays the bill. People are expecting things of me. And now my why, after coming back from Nepal and kind of thing, is back to being like, I run because it allows me to connect with people, it empowers me, it makes me the better version of myself. But that can't be all does this thing. So I kind of think about all the other things I can do. And for me, that's cooking in the kitchen and share, you know, language. It's taking my dog for a walk. It's reading a book. It's, you know, being on podcasts and connecting with people, especially during COVID. It's not been easy, but still making the time to have conversations, because the art of conversation is drastically falling away from humans. And I think it's really important. So I think just having that conversation with yourself and understanding that you're not one thing. And if you are one thing, then you probably need to stop that one thing and see what else comes.
Yeah. It's so funny. Like sometimes, like during these conversations, when you're going and talking about the art of conversation and how we need to reintroduce that, but not only with other people, but also with yourself. I think that's a really nice philosophy to have, because otherwise you just get a bit lost in the past and the future if the questions just are not the right questions that we've been asking ourselves. So thank you for touching all that. I think I needed that reminder probably as much as anyone else. But I actually wanted to talk about your hamstring for a second. So you had this injury. Is that the injury that led you to, I guess, your love of stretching now?
I would say it was the injury that led me to realizing that stretching is probably a non-negotiable, and I needed to learn to love it. It's something that, you know, when you're young, and I know I'm 24 and my dad would laugh at me, but you just wake up, you run, you just go sit down in class, you know, you don't really look after your body. But I've realized that, you know, coming up to 9 years of running a lot of kilometers, is that I do need to find the time to stretch. And it doesn't have to be, you know, an ultra mindset on it where you have to do it for hours and hours. It's kind of like those 10 minutes a day, those 1%ers that mean that I can run, a lot more of the time. So it's a love-hate relationship, but it's something that I love sharing, because I think that, it's something that needs to be normalized and made time for.
Absolutely. I unfortunately learned the heartbreaking way of getting an injury, not even like during my training. And I'm like, I couldn't run for like 2 months because I had an inflamed ITB. So I always say, if you don't have time to stretch, you probably don't have time to run. And that might seem strict, but I feel like if you love running and, you know, you might not identify yourself as a runner, but it's something you love to do, even if it's like 20 minutes a day or however you see that. If you see that as the short term, don't stretch. But if you want to run for the long term and you like walking your beautiful dog, or you like, you know, doing whatever and being active, I think stretching is, like you said, a non-negotiable. I don't know. I don't think it's hard, but I don't know. If you don't have time to stretch, would you say that if you don't have time to stretch, you don't have time to run?
Yeah, or I would I'm a big believer in you're better off taking 10 minutes off your run and hitting the mat for 10 minutes. Sometimes instead of running 10Ks, I'll run 8Ks, just fit in 10 minutes of core stretching, because that will pay much bigger in the future than those extra 2 kilometers that you may have run.
What does that 10 minutes look like for you? Like, what are the types of exercises that you're doing? And is that part of your cool down then?
Yeah, so I usually do it straight after a run just because everything's kind of warmed up. So that 10 minutes is usually a lot of bridges, mainly for my hamstring. Might have like a resistance band. And then core exercises. So I do some planks, I do some bicycles, some mountain climbers. They're really basic. You know, it's something I can do anywhere. I don't need anything. And then just kind of not so much static stretching, more like mobility, and taking more of my yoga background and just going through some, sun salutations and downward dogs. And, you know, I think runners always focus on their legs, but, you know, your back is what's holding you upright, and, you know, you hold your arms for all those hours as well. So not kind of forgetting any part of the body.
Oh, for sure. And, you know, touching back to what we were talking about before, I think a while back with like pain and the fact that you, I guess, and most runners do, they push themselves through injuries, which is what you kind of did with your hammy. And it's so interesting to see these two worlds of, say, we've got on this side, like David Goggins, hey, I'll run 150 Ks after a leg workout and a freaking torn meniscus or whatever the hell he had. And he's just like pushed through the pain. And then you've got this other side, which I would probably classify as like loving, compassionate and caring outward look towards your body. Like, have you found a nice balance between push your body to the limit and also love and care and all those sorts of things?
I would say I haven't found probably the perfect balance. That's why I have a coach who can kind of foresee when things are starting to become unbalanced, or starting to see in my log that, wow, you know, like this tiredness is sticking around, and that tiredness will lead to bad running form, which will lead to injuries, you know, and it's being able to foresee that. And as much as, you know, you live in the present, like we were saying before, you need to have someone that can zoom out and give you that perspective. I think for me, you know, with my training and where I'm at, you know, especially at the moment, there's no races. So to push through any uncomfortable feelings, to push through like bad mental health days, to push through physical pain is silly. There's nothing to gain from it, and there's time to spare. I think that this has really taught me, you know, when you do listen to your body and you give your body self-love and you give your body space to grow and to recover and to rest and then to nourish it, you realize that its potential is far more. You know, I had a flare up with my other hamstring just 2 weeks ago. So the recovery time for the hamstring that hurt me in New Zealand was 6 months, because I continually kept running on it. I ignored it. I was in denial. I felt it on the other side, and I took 3 days off, and I was super happy. I swam, I caught up with my brother, I walked my dog, and in 3 days it was pretty good to go. And I think it really shows that when you give space and you give time and you take the energy that you'd be putting into your running and you put it into resting and repairing and, you know, strengthening that muscle, your body can do it. It's amazing what it can do. And yeah, I think sometimes we just need to take a step back and be like, I'll take 2 working hamstrings over, barely being able to run 5 kilometers every day.
Oh, for sure. And, being that it is during, I guess, almost like the outward side for the Australian COVID era, but what's motivating you now that there's like not a lot of races going on?
So I have some projects that I'm really working towards. One of them being like in Australia, the Lyra Pinta Trail, which is in the Northern Territory. I've always wanted to go and run that. It's a 240 kilometer route that goes from Alice Springs. And it's got amazing Aboriginal history, and it's the real red sand desert. So I really want to get up there, and I'm kind of planning that. And that's not something I want to do like just really, really fast, because I don't want to run past such history and, completely, push dust onto it. So there's that. But then there's just little goals. I just want to work on getting balanced, getting healthy. I want to I guess I just want to feel good, and I'm motivated enough by that. I want to be able to race next year and for many years past, and I'm in no hurry to run certain times or to do certain other goals. I just think right now I just need to focus on the now.
Oh, absolutely. And you touched on a really big keyword that I want to open up and explore a little bit. You said you want to be healthy. What does that mean? What does being healthy mean to you?
Yeah, I think being healthy, it's such a funny thing to say. I say it haphazardly like I did before, because, there's a depiction of what healthy looks like, and then there's the reality of what healthy looks like. And there's healthy on Instagram, and then there's healthy in real life, and they're very, very different. Then we create assumptions as humans. This person's happy, healthy, and thriving. And behind that lens, of that one shutter shock for that camera, is a lie. So for me, healthy is having the ability to rest. It's having the ability to see the bigger picture, to understand that nothing, like my running doesn't define me. My choices, they're a part of me, but they are not me. So healthy for me is, obviously physically, it's mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's kind of just all those elements kind of, if you think of it like a Venn diagram, it's that center point where they all overlap in equal portions. There's been times where running has, and, there will continue to be where running takes over. It becomes more running than social, and more running than, seeing my family when I'm traveling. But it's kind of understanding that we can always shift those circles back and get back to that middle point, because that's where the real living happens, is where you can have all those elements a part of your day and a part of yourself.
That's amazing. Let's all get to the middle of that Venn diagram. I love it. And look, part of being healthy is obviously food. We need to fuel ourselves with some amazing nutrients. And, obviously the fact that you just released a cookbook is part of the reason I'm asking this question. But what meals are you just loving to whip up in the kitchen recently to nourish your soul?
Yeah. I'm a creature of habit. I am a big fan of I pretty much have the same thing every day with like very small changes in it. But I'm a smoothie bowl absolute fiend. I love them so much. There's something about just being able to put whatever toppings you like on it, and for it just to be so nourishing and so filling, and perfect after a run, and especially. So smoothie bowl is kind of my go-to favorite. And then I'm pretty much a Mexican lover. I love Mexican food. I'm nachos, burritos, tacos, quesadillas, anything that I can load up, guacamole, a cashew sour cream, some mushrooms, some beans, some corn chips. I'm all about that. So that's kind of, that pretty much sums up my day and my life.
Well, you know what? It's Taco Tuesday tomorrow, so you can celebrate. I actually, I'm a big lover of Mexican as well. I actually have been doing Taco Tuesdays for maybe close to 6 months. Like it's stupid. Like you fall in love with these almost like the novelty of having a routine food that night. It's like the nicest thing not to think about it, but also know that Tuesday comes, you're like, your tummy's just ready to have a go.
Love it.
And then I was wondering what an average day looks like. I'm going to ask you maybe like 7, 8, 9 months ago when you were training for races and things like that, what sort of routine did you have to make sure you were kind of keeping up tip-top shape?
Yeah. So, I mean, my days don't vary too much. In the life I lead, weekends mean nothing. Weekdays, every day is a weekday, it seems, or every day is a weekend, probably more so. I wake up with the light. So, like if it's summer, I wake up really, really early. If it's winter, I wake up a bit later. So I don't have blinds and I have a skylight. So everything kind of just when the light enters is when my body wakes up. And then I'm pretty relaxed in the mornings. I have some green tea. I have a lot of water and then go running. So I usually train fasted, which is something that is it's a bit divided on people's opinions on it, especially for females. But it's
why
something
for females in particular?
Fasting, I would just say that I am too lazy to get up early enough to eat, and I just don't feel great eating before a run. So for females, what it can do to your hormones is something that is like a huge part in training fasted. I know that it's pretty beneficial for men, but for women, it's considered to be not as advantageous, especially when not done well. Because I think the whole thing is that women tend not to then catch up on the calories after the run. Which I have no problem in doing.
Smoothie bowl to the rescue. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So I train for, 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, maybe. Maybe that means strength after it, or it might just be running. I have a smoothie bowl. I play with my dog, sit in the sun, hang out, talk to my dad, do some emails, like really just put my feet up and rest and take the mind off the training. Have some lunch. It's normally like a lighter lunch, and then go to the second training, which might be like swimming or cycling or running again or gym, or maybe just stretching and yoga. And then, put the feet up again, have some dinner and go to bed and do it all again.
Sounds amazing. Do you incorporate any sort of mindfulness or meditation into your days?
Yeah.
Or is that kind of like your runs?
Well, no, because I think for running, I find running like meditation, but I don't think that you can switch off, like I say, on trails. You just don't really have that. So for me, when I'm training for big race, and like you say, 7 or 8 months ago, maybe I'd be really taking the time, especially before bed when your mind can run wild. Or maybe it might be in the morning before going for a big training session and kind of visualizing, this is going to be a hard session, but this race you're going to feel like this at some point in this race. So let's lean into that and get better for it. So I would say probably you're right. I would probably do nothing, I can only do 5 to 7 minutes of meditation really before I kind of am either hungry, need a pee, or just, something else happens. But yeah, it's something that I've really kind of wanted to include more. And I thought during this pandemic, I would probably use it more than I have, but it's something that for me has ebbed and flowed in my life. When I've needed it, it's been there. And I did a lot of it in Nepal. I did a lot of it after Nepal. And then I think I found a balance and an equilibrium where I probably should still, but I don't feel called to it right now.
Yeah, love it. I want to switch gears and talk about body positivity for a second. I love talking about it because I think, in this day and age, I think it's very skewed. I mean, especially due to, your good old Instagram and all these different social medias. Do you do anything in particular or any mindsets or perspectives that you've changed in order to show your body more appreciation or gratitude?
I would say, for me, I grew up with like not a great relationship with food and my body and sport. I've always been a grateful person that I was able to participate in so many sports, and my body enabled me to do that. But when you put yourself out on, say, on social media like Instagram, and for me, I have 88,000 followers and I have 88,000 opinions on the way that I look and the way I should look and the things that I eat and the things that I do. And that's a really tough place to be in, and whether you're male or female and whether you're young or you're old, and no one likes to be told that, oh, wow, you've gained weight, or wow, you've lost weight. And, when I trained for that 100-mile race in America in 2018, I lost a lot of weight. I got really, everyone said, wow, she's really fit. And I had a good race and I was successful and apparently I was healthy. And, this was kind of the best place to be. But I look back and I know that Lucy, past Lucy, wasn't, if you talk about that Venn diagram, was certainly not in the middle. She was way skewed off. So I think, obviously I went through a process then. And when I said 2019 was hard, I mean, it was really hard. My body changed a lot. And I said at the start, your body will, whether you want it to or not, it will force you to rest and it will do what it needs to do to survive. And for me, that was, gain a bit of weight. And that's something that it's pretty hard. And like I say, with so many people who want to comment and tell you about it when you're pretty aware of it yourself. So for me, I think, I just want to be someone who is open to talk about it. I want to say, I had an eating disorder. I came out of that. I became a professional ultra runner. I probably went too deep into that. I came out of that, probably went too far the other way. And now I'm finding like a balance in between. And, I have that mindset you're probably understanding. And I think it's very clear is that I either go all in or not in. It's kind of, if I'm going to run, I'm going to run an ultra. If I'm going to eat vegetarian, I might as well eat vegan. If I'm going to, if I'm going to sleep 6 hours, I might as well sleep 9 hours. I'm kind of, except for meditation, that just stays at 5.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just I want to be open about that whole journey. And the journey is by far not over. And I think it's really important to show that like strong, not skinny, and to be super, I run in a sports bra because I'm proud of my body. I'm not covering it up, or I'm not going to like sweat and be super uncomfortable in the fear that someone will see me and think, wow, she's bigger. And I just think that like, it's so unfair because I look at other people who run, and especially females, and I just think, you have this body, you have this able body, and someone else's opinion is telling you that it's not good enough. And it's one thing for everyone else to believe that you're enough, but it's another thing for you to think that you are enough. And that's kind of where I'm at, is just this whole one in a melon thing came from just this real belief that everyone is so unique and so beautiful, but we're all in this together. We're all who we are for a reason. And, we're all trying to, there's a lot of people wanting to change who they are. And that's through things like Instagram, where you can filter your nose to be smaller and your teeth to be wider and your hair to be a little blonder. And it's just fake. And it's just not telling anyone that they're enough if we're all just trying to change who we are through the lens of our camera. So, for me, it's just finding that pride in who I am, what I've been through, owning it, leaning into it, sharing it, embracing it, and growing from it. Because, I'm sure if you talk to me in a month's time, I hope to say, I screwed up a few more times, but I've also learned a whole lot through that.
That's amazing. I love all of that. And I feel like you made the question its own little journey. And I love that. I was really taken aback by what you said. And I think it's really powerful. And I think admitting to it, and also like, have you developed different techniques in how you kind of deal with the negative stuff that you hear, especially online? Because when you have these 88,000 opinions, and look, I did some stalking, and, I found a post that was quite derogatory towards you. And I think you know which one I'm talking about, where they did the close-up photos of you, and that I did a stalking on the actual Instagram page, and it was just it was a hate page. So, you know, that's kind of like their vibe. But what techniques have you developed to kind of take you from that hate mentality, which I think it's okay to get stuck in for a little bit, but obviously you have to drag yourself back out?
Yeah, I know the exact post you're talking about, and I only found it recently, and yet it was posted, I think, at the start of last year. But I've always had the support of people like my dad, and my dad will always be the person that will read every comment that is written on my Instagram. And if there's something negative or something that questions what I was doing or who I am, he's the kind of person that will bring it up and say, hey, let's talk about this. Why do you think this person said this? What do you think their perspective is? Where are they coming from? And, are you going to take that on board, or are you going to push that away? And sometimes it's been really cool. Like, I'm open to people questioning what I do, what I eat, who I am, what I wear, because it makes me question that too. And I think it's really good to check back in with yourself and be like, yeah, I really like what I eat. I really like what I wear. I'm really happy with who I am. That's fine. Cool. You don't agree with that. Like, some people are your people, some people aren't your people. And I took a bit of understanding to realize you're never going to please everyone. And I think for me, like when I found that post, the post you're referring to, they really, first of all, they had a go at the vegan lifestyle. And that was kind of like the reason behind my downfall in performance, my downfall in appearance, all on their opinions, of course, was of what I ate. And what I don't like is when people take my values or my things that I choose, whether that be my religion, my food lifestyle, my, those things, and bring that back as if like I'm the example of everything. And because I had this, it means that every vegan must be deficient and gaining weight and will have downfalls in performance. So I think for me, it's just kind of, I read it, I see it. I'm on social media a lot. My phone tells me at the end of the week that I'm on my phone way too much. But it's been a process to be able to read it, to take a breath. Maybe go for one run and feel really self-conscious and really sad about kind of this is where we're still at in 2020. And that this is what people spend their time and their lives doing, is pulling other people down. But, the only way people can pull you down is if they're below you. And that's kind of where I'm at, is that, like, I am me and I will continue to be me. If you don't like it, don't follow it. You don't have to be a part of my life. I don't have to be a part of yours. But as if you're happy with you and I'm happy with me, then like, that's a pretty sweet world to be in. So it's just kind of like having that perspective. It's not easy. And I've had a lot of kind of females and males that have received similar things. And, they've asked me to kind of, coach them through that. And it's not something that can be easily taught. And it's something that you just kind of have to, unfortunately, have lots and lots of exposure to it to then realize that, it happens now and then. But of the 88,000 people that follow me, I'd say 87.999 are beautiful people. It's just kind of a perspective thing. It's a support thing. And it's just a confidence thing that I'm okay with who I am. And I will continue to be that.
For sure. It's almost like that whole crab in the bucket situation where these crabs, have you heard the crab in the bucket whole metaphor thing where it's the most non-vegan metaphor, so excuse me for this. But these crabs are going to go get cooked in this kitchen and they're all in the bucket, and this one crab just has the great idea of, wait, why don't we get out? And he starts clawing to the top of the bucket, but not all the crabs can get up because they're their physique or whatever it is. So the other crabs start grabbing at his claw to bring him back down. Like, no, we're in this together. So it's like, you got to be that crab that's getting out of the bucket because there's a better way. So I love that. I love that so much. And it's so cool to hear that, because of your experiences, whether you're grateful for them or not, I'm sure other people are grateful that you had that experience, because then you can go on podcasts and have conversations in which you can bring other people higher, which is great.
Thank you.
I'm curious to know on that mindset, something I've been drilling down these past few months because I've had personal battles with this issue. What do you think of this whole counting calorie business?
Oh, I think it's a slippery slope. I think there is a place for it. I really do believe if you're training for something like yourself for a marathon, if you have trouble understanding what is in your food and how, like the energy that it can give you, I think that there is definitely a place for it. I think that it's educational. It's important to understand. I mean, nowadays it's everywhere. You go into, I haven't been into like a big McDonald's, but it has, the calories of everything. It's really kind of prominent. And it's really good to be educated and to understand, but it's not when it rules your world and it rules your plate. I'm a big believer in, being educated, understanding what's going into your body, understanding what's a protein source, what's a carb source, what's a fat source, knowing that a fat is always going to be higher in calories, and that's really important. And it's not taught well in schools. It's not taught in a way that is healthy to then take into society. But especially for me, following a vegan diet, there was a point that I tracked what I ate, but I didn't track it through wanting to count calories and cut down as much as possible. I tracked it through wanting to understand the nutrients and the macro breakdown and kind of being like, I want to make sure I'm getting my iron, that I'm getting protein, that I'm getting rich sources of fats and omega-3s and omega-6s. And, I really believe that counting calories are a number, but instead of thinking of calories, think of energy. Think of that energy being potential. If you eat something that's high in calories, you're eating something that's going to potentially fuel you for an amazing adventure. As a runner, I burn a lot of calories and I need to fuel that. But I always see it as like I'm fueling for that next run, for that regrowing, for that repairing, for that strengthening. And when you look at food that way and you look at it as it's nourishing, it's thriving me, it's going to sustain me forward, then it gives a whole new meaning to eating fats in your diet, because I can't deal with this low fat, low carb. I don't know what people eat these days, but it just seems like everyone just wants to eat less. And it's just, like that's only going to lower your potential. So it's just not, there's a point that it's healthy. And then there's a very slippery slope, and understanding that if you find yourself starting to slip, that you put your hand out like that crab and you try and get out of that bucket.
Yes. Love all of that. So considering this counting calories and you got to fuel yourself right, like we were talking about before, I wonder, I'd say you're pretty I'd say you're iconic as a plant-powered athlete, right? Did you find that you've ever had some sort of pressure of having to compete a certain way, not because you're Lucy or the expectations, but almost like you don't want to seem malnourished from the plant-based community, or in that perspective? Have you ever felt pressure from that way?
No, I haven't really. I mean, when I was training in 2018 for that Western States, and like I said, I lost a lot of weight, and that was really because I was uneducated, and that the training I was doing, it wasn't because I was trying to eat less and lose weight. It was because I was training so hard, I wasn't eating enough, and the balance wasn't there. But, obviously people draw a parallel between a vegan diet, which can seem restrictive and, like a lot of people seem to think that you start to disappear if you take meat off your plate, and you're really
just fade away. Yeah.
Yeah. You start fading away and you're super gaunt. And I became doing that, and they drew parallels, and they were like, oh, well, it's because she's vegan. And I had someone the other day say, I just started re-following you again. And I said, oh, that's interesting. Why did you stop following me? And she said, oh, you were it was hard watching someone fade away. And I thought that was a really kind of like straight to the heart kind of thing where I was like, wow, you know, people were just on social media watching and just kind of thinking that this is what I was going towards, was that I just was going to fade away from life. And she said, you know, I've come back and I've just never been so stoked to see someone who's coming back and doing it right. And I guess I don't think that I really feel any pressure from it. I feel like they're choices that I make, but they're not who I am. And, you know, I do my best. The reason why I'm plant-based and vegan isn't because of wanting to be superior or be this icon or be this, you know, this image of what it should be like. I'm doing it for the environment, and I'm doing it for the more of the animals than myself. So kind of any other stigma that comes with it is just like, that's cool, but like I'm just choosing where my money goes.
I love it. And then kind of tailbacking, is that a thing? I don't know.
We'll go with it.
Tailing on to that, you know, and I know we're getting on the tail end of the episode as well. What's the best piece of advice you could give someone in terms of fitness?
Enjoy it. You know, my biggest advice would be to enjoy the journey. You know, it's not going to happen overnight. You know, fitness is a term that when you're fit, you'll want to be fitter. And to just kind of like enjoy this journey, because it should be with you your whole life. You know, share it with others. You know, don't just make running that you do by yourself and super isolated. You know, go hiking with friends, go swimming in the sea with dolphins. You know, make it.
Oh, that would be amazing. Yes,
wouldn't it? I say that like I do it all the time.
Yeah, no. Where's your spot? Where do you go? Yeah.
But yeah, make it not about fitness. You know, make it about being social. Make it about the cafe you're going to go to afterwards. Make it about just anything other than like just trying to be fit, because I hear too much people say, oh, I'm just trying to get fit. And it's like, you know, you're an able-bodied person, you participate in society. For general standards, you're probably considered fit, you know, but you want to empower yourself, you know, strengthen relationships with others and, you know, explore the world. Those kind of goals are so much more exciting and enticing and not as limited as I want to be fit.
Yeah, I think that's really empowering. It's also going to keep you going, because, you know, I want to be fit is too bland, and I feel like you'd stop because like, what does that mean? And everyone's got different, it's so subjective. And I think it evolves over time as well. Like nowadays, like, yes, I'm training for a marathon, but I love my long runs, because then I'm like, oh, I can eat all the food I want today. Like I need to get that many calories back in. I'm like, yes.
Yeah. What marathon are you doing?
I have no idea, because there's no events. Because there's no events, I don't know when they're going to come back. I'm just like, screw it. I'll train up until like I'm following a program, and then if there's an event around like February, January, March, I'll do it. If not, screw it. I've got a friend that's training with me, and I'm like, we'll just do it together. Whatever. Same thing with the half marathon. I signed up to do the run Melbourne, I think it was, and I wanted to do the Melbourne marathon as well, but then it cancels. I'm screwed. I just do it myself. So I think that's cool.
Motivation.
Yeah. I mean, it's just fun. Like you said, just enjoy it. And in terms of general things, I mean, we touched on so much amazing things. And, you know, for anyone who wants to connect with you, what are the best places that we can go? And where can we get this cookbook, by the way?
Yeah. So Instagram's my main platform. So it's Lucy_Bartholomew. Facebook is pretty much a copy and paste of Instagram, so I probably wouldn't bother going to both of them. I'm on Strava if you want to see the running. Lucy Bartholomew.
She's a beast. Yep, do it.
There's a lot of running. And then on my website, which is usually the link in my bio on Instagram, and that's where my cookbook is being sold. So it's being sold as an ebook right now. And then in about a week and a half, it'll come out in hard copy, which is very exciting.
Awesome. So by the time this episode comes out, it'll be well within the hard copy range. And of course, I'll leave everything in the show notes so people can go and get there like super easily without having to spell Bartholomew and not knowing how to spell it. But, you know, on the tail end as well, on the tail end, because I've said that so many times, is there anything that you'd love to leave us with in the form of Lucy wisdom that we potentially didn't touch on, or something that you're super passionate about that you wanted to share?
I think we've covered a lot today, but I think, the main message that I think is important to share is that your smile can change the world. And I think that, especially during COVID times, and I know that masks have just been, made not compulsory outside, maybe you have to stay 1.5 meters away from each other, but a smile can travel further than that. And so whether you're running, whether you're doing anything, just sharing a smile can boost someone else. It can make someone else's day, but that energy is returned to you. So that's kind of, my last leaving thoughts.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for sparing the time and effort and all the amazing bit of wisdom that you've bestowed upon us in today's episode. And, good luck for all the events that you have coming on. And thank you so much for smiling and for being a good PR agent for the watermelon and, doing that all and inspiring others to potentially have a more plant-based lifestyle and be compassionate towards animals and, of course, towards their own body. So thank you for all of that. And thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And sorry about the connection.
That's okay. What needed to be said was said. Hi there. Welcome to the end of the episode. Thank you so much for listening the whole way through. I really appreciate you giving me your time and attention, whether you were driving or working or going for a walk, whatever that may be. I hope that this conversation did provide you value. Thank you, Lucy, once again for coming on and sharing your amazing nuggets of wisdom. If this conversation did bring you value, feel free to share it with some friends or family members, colleagues, or pets, whatever rings your bell. And of course, the best way to help us is actually to leave a review on iTunes or Apple. It really helps us rise in the ranks in terms of the positioning on the charts and helps spread the word of plant positivity to the masses. That is all from me today, and I will see you all on next week's episode that I'm really excited to get into as well. Stay happy, eat plants, peace.